Hi guys, my name is Borrodante, and welcome back to Overpaint. Today's patient is Boris. Hey Boro, hey Boris. I'm a complete noob at painting. Well, I'd argue that. That's a pretty cool artwork right there. Can't really put my finger on what isn't working in this picture. All I know is that my eyes don't like it. Hope to hear from you soon. Alright, let's check it out. So this is quite a special story we have here. So one thing I would start with is, of course, the composition. Like, the composition is fine for what it is right now, but as pretty much any concept artist, statistically average commercial artist would say that this picture has a bad angle. Like, these are the giant creatures, they're kind of attacking the person, and we can see this big shadow casted from them, which kind of implies that this is supposed to be like a story about things getting pretty dark for this person right here. And one thing that any artist would tell you right away, that you should make the angle where, you know, things would go more like, here's that fish with the fork, whatever, and it's like very creepy and menacing. And the bigger cat would be like here. That's some epic face for a cat. The smaller cat would be probably here. Of course, it's not the only way to go about it. And the kid would be laying right here. And we would have this perspective a little bit like that, you know? An obvious advice that most people would give you. It's not wrong, I'm not going for that. This is a totally good advice, like you would wanna do that to make the most out of this story. The story of something horrible about to happen and someone giant is approaching. You always lower the camera, so the horizon line would be here. Come to think of it, maybe this cat should be higher than too. And in this scenario, what we would also do is have a good use of that lighting that you have in the original, only in this case it would be a pure rim light coming from the back of all these creepy characters about to eat the kid. And so they're casting that shadow like that as well. Perfect. Great advice, great thing to do. This is what I would usually go with in most episodes, but today I just want to go with what the original is and make sense out of that. Because first of all, I don't know if this wasn't intentional to do it exactly like that. It feels a little bit like an RPG isometrical kind of look, like Diablo or the old Final Fantasy stuff. And if this is not a commercial image, why not make things different? Why should we always follow that rule to make everything perfectly clear? Like, what if we want to look at this angle, right? It just looks very interesting at this angle. It would be a very impressive, but also a very typical kind of story if we would do it like this. From this angle, it's actually very cool, especially the fish. It looks so awesome, but it has little to do with the angle, mostly it's just an awesome fish. It has such a Japanese vibe to it, like everything looks like anime, even though there's no anime faces in the shot. So I guess what we're gonna do is mostly play with the lighting and then maybe with the brushwork to make things work a bit better than what they are right now. I really love the composition. It feels like a postcard in a way. Just such a good set of details. Everything is just great. Probably the main thing that I would start with is thinking through this shadow. It's a bit flat or weird, kind of not really on that surface of the ground. Maybe it just needs to be sharper, like if we would see that the shadow is really sharp next to the objects that are casting it, it would play much more like a real shadow. Because when we see that the shadow is touching the object that is casting it, but it's not sharpened there, it's like, it's probably not from that object then what is it? And this way it immediately like falls into the right place right away. So I'll do that. Maybe I'll make the shadows not as long, but I'm not sure, maybe something like that, because the lighting in here is, you know, this would be the geometry of that shadow, and a cat would cast it like this, so a bit more in here as well. That's how the shadow would work here, I think. So I don't know, let's just search. So right here, I'm thinking through the shadow on the cat. First of all, I thought, like, how exactly the fish will cast the shadow of this shape onto the cat, like it would go like that. These are the areas where it will cover it up. That will go further, and here it will hit like this. And then, all of this area is just the shadow now, which means only the skylight without the sun. In here, the rules are simple, but nonetheless important. Everything that's facing upwards, or more upwards, will be brighter than something that's facing sideways or downwards. So the whole top of the back will be brighter, and getting closer to the sides of the cat will get darker colors. Making the whole cat a bit brighter. I think the shadow area was too dark, too strong of a contrast. Yes, this is a strong shadow, but this is still a white cat. Would it be any different in the shadow if this would be a dark gray cat? I don't think so. So this is how it's supposed to be. Oh, and also another thing I'm doing, like, I'm grabbing the color of the environment, like in here I'm grabbing this green color, and then I'm adding the reflected light to the cat and to other stuff, like to the fish right now. Also, I forgot to erase this stuff. Good thing I have another layer for that. Let's fix that right now. So I'm grabbing this color, and then I paint everywhere, like I check if I paint here, and it's not making the surface brighter, because in this case, this color of the grass is literally darker than the color of the sunlit skin, so that's a no-go. But in here, in the shadow, it's definitely like this green is way brighter than the skin. That's a good part to place that reflected light. So what I will do is, I'll use a very low opacity kind of, I'm pressing very slightly, and I'm adding this reflected light everywhere where it fits. As we go further and further, it becomes less and less strong. So this whole area is a perfect place, and it helps, like, if it's too hard to go semi-transparent, you just grab the resulting color and blend that in to have a perfect, super subtle, very precise gradient. So the teeth, I'm also making them mostly green, like with the influence of green color, because that's the only influence it can get. Like, skylight is not as saturated as a sunlit grass reflecting its light onto everything next to it, going a bit green there as well. So about that reflection on the eye, right? Cool stuff. So I did the simple reflection like I imagined, some kind of foliage over here, kind of squished it this way. On top there's sky, and a little dot for the sun. a lot smaller than what it used to be in the original, because anything reflected on a spherical object will be very tiny. Like, it's the whole 360 degrees around that ball is being reflected on such a small surface, and the sun, initially small, reflected on a ball is even smaller. And yeah, then I added the Fresnel effect, erasing everything like this a little bit, creating a soft gradient. That's giving it that cool, photorealistic, physically correct kind of effect. Same thing I did here, more or less. Like, I don't know. This is a pretty good fix, I think, by now. The fish looks very horrible with a bit more of a realistic lighting. And here it was such a stylized, more of a flat anime kind of look. It felt more lighthearted. But when it's turning into this, it's suddenly a bit too real. Like, you immediately feel like the mass to that fish. Like, each bump on its face, on its head, is kind of like a mass. And yeah, the cat being actually, like, looking actually white really makes it so much better, I think. What do you guys think? Am I right here? I think this is just the right thing to do. And like, this cat proves it perfectly over here. This cat is completely in the shadow. Of course, the lighting is all off because it's still kind of in the sunlight if it's from that direction. But generally, this cat was probably painted and colored into this part already surrounded by all shadow, and subconsciously you immediately make the much more correct decision of just making this cat white comparing to everything around it. Yes, all of this is a shadow, but still, if something's white, it should be brighter, even in the shadow, than other objects that are not white, that are also in the shadow. Let's add some of that green ambience already to the cat. Actually, to this one too, on that side. I don't know about the cat's anatomy or anything like that. I don't know. If you want to improve the cat's anatomy, look up cats. Also, let's add some contact shadows. So I'm making the ground color much darker and adding some darker spots over here. In general, though, the ground is a bit too dark in the shadow. Like, I get the whole thing, but, you know, we want to see what's up. So making it a bit brighter, like a tone brighter. Because I'm pretty sure even in the video, you weren't actually seeing very well what I was doing there with the contact shadow just now. And yeah, now we have some value space to have darker shadows from right under the big fish and right under the big cat, which is something we really need, like adding this stronger shadow right at the contact of two surfaces. How is that head? Oh, that's the I see, so the head is facing here, apparently. This guy is seriously messed up. Brutal stuff. Oh, the foliage. So much of it in my life. So it was the big cat that did this to the guy. It was in the original as well. Adding some sharper reflections on the outlines of the fish. Looking pretty dope, at least while I'm close to it. Yeah, alright, looking pretty cool from the distance too. But we need to turn some of the lines into actual surfaces. This is a common mistake. When the rim light is just always a line, that's not the case. It shouldn't be like that. Sometimes it makes sense to make it, to like spread it further on the surface. If this is the whole eye thing is like a big cylinder, it allows for a big gradient of that reflection. So that's where you spread it a little bit. Alright, I guess this is it. I mean, we could add a little more shading details to the little cat. Some of the grass covering up the feet of the characters standing on it. Also always a good thing to do with the foliage. Didn't really do the whole idea with the shadow ending somewhere, but I think it turned out fine without that. Like, we could do this. So yeah, there we go. This is how we can turn a pretty cool, interesting drawing into a bit of a more realistic render. Actually, like, the whole reflected light and reflections on the eyes on the fish are looking really cool, but my favorite part here, favorite fix, is on the cat. The fish looked great in the original as well. It was just more of a flat, simplified style. But the cat was wrong. It felt like it was dipped into something black, and I kind of made it look white again. Like, in some areas it was actually darker than the ground. Kinda weird. So yeah, this is it. Tell me guys what you think about the change. Thank you, Boris, for your submission. This is a really cool and different drawing. Really liked working with this one. If any of you guys want to submit your picture for the Overpaint, the link to my Patreon page is in the end of this video. You become a patron in Overpaint tier, submit the picture in the community feed, and write some message. I read the message and overpaint the picture. And I thank you for watching if you did. I guess you did if you're here. Leave a like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Stay home. Do whatever you want. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Yeah, the super dark spot of the big shadow. That was the weakest part of this picture, I think. I wonder what's the weakest part now?